Hello, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to start a series talking about financial metrics, specifically geared toward what phase of business that we're in. If you go out there and read about different phases or stages of businesses, sometimes you'll hear there are 4 stages or 5 stages or 6. I'm going to kind of walk through probably about 4 or 5 of the different phases that you may find in business, and then talk about financial metrics as it relates to each stage of the business. And today we're going to start talking about the startup phase. So you kind of have this idea, you want to go ahead and get a business started, and you kind of begin the operation of this business. And when you're in the startup phase, when we talk about a life cycle of a business, of course, a startup phase, sometimes it's called a launch stage or development stage. Basically, you're taking this idea and you are going to take this idea and do something with it. It may be a product, it may be a service, it may be an app, it could be whatever. But you have something that you're wanting to monetize on. And when you're in this stage of a business, you're really talking about a business that is getting funded primarily through the owner's investment, his or her own personal cash. You may have other investors that come alongside you to invest in the business. It may be for a debt or equity position. It could be a bank. It could be the SBA that's coming alongside and putting cash into the business. And at this point, you have no profit. And you just have an idea, and you're beginning to formulate this idea into something that you hope will monetize. Now, most businesses, when they start off, of course, the business owner always has this grander idea of success. But we know statistically, I think the number is right around 22% of businesses fail in year one. About half of businesses will fail within the first 5 years of the start of the business. So as we see that most businesses do not make it, a very small percentage of businesses ever will make it to the 10, 15 year mark. So we see that most businesses kind of fail right off the bat within the first 5 years of the startup of the business. So this startup phase. Now, when you get into the startup phase, you really should be starting with a certain amount of money and a certain amount of time that you're willing to invest in this business. And so you're going in, the owner really needs to ask himself or herself 2 questions. How much money am I willing to spend on this venture, and how much time am I willing to invest? And then that is kind of determined before you even start the process. So once the cash runs out, once the time runs out, once the resources run out, and the business has not monetized, the business has not gotten to the point of reaching any sort of level of profitability, probably at some point you're going to pull the plug if you kind of realize that, hey, this may have been a good idea in my head, but it just really isn't going to work out as a business model. It may be because of the limitations of the owner. It may be that we thought there might be an appetite for this particular product or service in the market, but there isn't. Many times it's just the business owner. They just don't have what it takes to run a successful business. Now, of course, there's a number of different metrics, or I can say maybe even KPIs, that a business will want to look at. And I could sit here and talk for a very long time talking about the different KPIs, but I'm going to kind of point out 8 different metrics. These aren't all necessarily KPIs, but they are 8 different metrics that you're going to want to look at when you're in this startup phase as it relates to your business. And I would say that probably when you're in the startup phase, you're going to be looking at most of these at a weekly, at minimum a monthly basis, and you're going to be making tweaks in your budgets, in your operations month over month, until you really get to that first year where you begin to really have a better idea of what you're doing within the business. So I have 8 different metrics, and a couple of these have kind of sub-metrics in them that you're going to want to look at, especially in the first year. Of course, there could be many more. Some of these may not pertain to your business, but kind of identified 8. First is budget to actual spend. So when you get in and you've kind of determined this is the amount of money that I'm willing to spend on this business venture, you're going to go through and you're going to budget out, this is what I'm going to spend in each area of the business. So you're looking at marketing, you're looking at payroll, you are looking at office supplies, you're looking at furniture, you're looking at all these different areas of rent, utilities, etc., that you're going to deploy this cash. And then as you go through and you spend this, as it relates to each of these categories, you're going to want to look, this is what we budgeted versus this is what we've actually spent. Most of the time, business owners end up actually overspending, which you kind of go through and you're going to try this idea, you're going to try that idea, and you have all these ideas coming to you. Well, you should market this way, you should market that way, but really kind of determine how is it, what's going to be the best use of my money as it relates to the money that I have, where am I going to allocate it, and then hold yourself accountable to it. So your budget to your actual spend. Secondly, really looking at your revenue. And this includes not just your top line revenue, but also when you kind of break down that revenue, what is your monthly recurring revenue? That monthly recurring revenue is extremely important, I think, in any business cycle. I know for one of my businesses, that one of our goals is to have our monthly recurring revenue to be enough to cover our cost month over month. So we have enough monthly recurring revenue with engagements with our client that we know that every month that our entire firm expenses are covered from our monthly recurring revenue. Any sort of standalone projects or once a year clients that we see, that is just kind of gravy. That's going to be our profit. So that's the goal that we're at, and I'm measuring that month over month. Where am I at? So really be measuring if you do have a model that has recurring revenue, where are you at? And so how much revenue is needed to make this business profitable, and how much revenue and revenue growth is needed to reach to the point to where there's enough revenue to cover cost. So as you're going through and you're tracking revenue, and you know this is what it's going to cost to operate this business, be tracking that. Do I have enough revenue? What percentage of my revenue have I received? So when you kind of go through, and this is going to be kind of a little bit more complex to try to describe in a podcast, but ultimately what you're going to do with these, with all of these different metrics, is you're going to build something out to where you're going to be able to go through and say, okay, with each of these dials, once I reach a certain point, I know that my business is going to get out of the startup phase and into the next phase, which we'll talk about next week. And am I making progress toward getting to the point to where my business is actually profitable, where I'm actually making money in my business? So looking at your revenue, looking at your monthly recurring revenue, and making sure that they are progressing in a way that's going to get you to the point to where your business is profitable. And I'm going to define profit once we get into the profit stage of business. Number 3, burn rate. So really looking at your burn rate, and some of these I'm going to mention week over week as it relates to every single one of the phase that we're in, business that we're in. But burn rate's going to be one of those. But burn rate, how much cash am I spending each month? You need to understand, what does it cost to operate my business from an operational end? What is that burn rate? And next is going to be cash runway. So that's the length of time which a company can remain solvent. So it's going to answer this question: how long can we operate with the cash that we have? So the formula is your cash over your burn rate. So your cash divided by your burn rate. So if I have $10,000 to spend, I have $1,000 that I'm blowing through every month in cash to operate this business. I know that I have 10 months to figure this out. Okay, so that is my cash runway. Next, my customer, number 5 here, my customer acquisition cost. That's exactly as it sounds. How much is it going to cost for me to get a customer to actually to actually pay me? Okay, so not just for the customer to call me, not for the customer to book a call, to give me their business card and say, hey, call me. No, this is to what is my cost to actually get that customer to give me money. Okay, to actually buy my product, to buy my service, to purchase whatever it is that I'm selling. So what is that cost? My next, understanding my customer's lifetime value. So if we're in a transactional business, if I'm going through it, I'm selling pairs. Okay, I know that my lifetime value of that customer is probably a bag of pears, if that's what I'm selling. Okay, they're going to come through, they're going to buy a bag of pears, and they're going to leave. Then I'm going to determine, okay, how many times is that customer going to come back? Are they coming back weekly? Then we can end up building out this lifetime value. But I have to know who my customer is and be tracking that. Okay, so what is my customer lifetime value? For some businesses, it may just be one time. It's a one and done ordeal. Okay, for other businesses, and I think for most businesses, that we're going to be able to get that client to come back, and what is the lifetime value of that customer. And that's really going to help us as we build out our model going forward, to understand that this is the kind of revenue, provided we're doing the right things, that we can count on in the future as this customer hopefully continues to come back. So that customer lifetime value, what revenue will be generated from each new customer. So if in part of this calculation, if we have a recurring model, my monthly recurring revenue churn rate is going to be important as well. So as I'm going through and I have a model, say for example, I have an app they're paying me $10 a month for, I need to be looking at, okay, how many of these customers are going to be canceling every month? How many of them the credit card's going to bounce and they're not going to give me a new credit card number? And so all of these need to go into my calculation. So when I go through and I have this recurring revenue, I understand that not all of my customers are going to be paying me every month. Some of them are going to cancel. Some of them are not going to come back. So to understand what that churn rate is. Next, number 7 is going to be my recovery time. So what this is as it relates to my customer acquisition cost. So what is that timeline that's going to take for me to recover the cost for me obtaining that customer? So I go through and that customer pays me. And if for example, if they're giving me $10 a month, but it costs me $50 to acquire that customer, I know that it's going to take me 5 months to recoup the cost to acquire that customer. I need to know what that number is. So what is that recovery time? And the last, number 8, is going to be the gross margin. And the gross margin is just my revenue less my cost of goods sold. So what is my profit margin on that widget? So when I go through how much did it cost me, let me give you an example. So in my hand here, for those of you who are watching, you see I have an ink pen. Okay, so I know that this ink pen, it may cost me 39 cents to make it. Okay, so that is my cost of goods sold. That is what it's going to cost for me to make this pen. Okay, then I have to pay to have it shipped here. I have to pay to have it shipped to the customer. So I may have other costs. So maybe my all-in cost is 50 cents. Okay, so that's going to be my cost of goods sold. Now, if I'm selling that pen for $1, okay, then I know that my profit margin, my gross margin is 50 cents if I'm talking about in dollars, or 50%. Now from that, I have to go through and I have to pay my operations cost, but I need to understand what my gross margin is. So my revenue less my cost of goods sold. And so we understand that I have to get this margin to be enough to cover my administrative cost. Now, as you can see, there's going to be a number of different variables that are going to come into play. It can be a lot of work, and it is a lot of work to go through and try to determine what dials do I need to turn to be able to get customers to come and buy from me. To come and purchase, to give us $1. Okay, what is it going to take? And it is a lot of work. Business is not easy. Okay, but you're going to have all of these metrics in place that you're looking at. You're looking at them weekly. You're looking at them monthly, especially in the startup phase, and then understanding what do I need to do? What cost cutting do I need to make? Where do I need to deploy my marketing efforts in order to get my business out of that startup phase into profitability? So as a company works through the startup phase, the future revenue and expense projections will change, especially in year one. So if revenues outpace projections, for example, more money can be invested in pursuing new customers, improving processes, and hiring more people, kind of those elements that every business needs to have. If the business is underperforming based on projections, there may need to be a reallocation of cost, an analysis on what is or is not working in the business. So when I look at product, I look at process, I look at people, I look at marketing efforts, I look at my fulfillment process, what is working, what isn't working, and I need to be constantly making those adjustments, especially in year one, because I only have so much cash and so much time to be able to get this business to profitability. Hopefully this particular podcast brought you value, and I encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Belk on Business podcast, and I would love to have a review from you if you're so inclined. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.